to refer specifically to the Commonwealth and the Caribbean community? If the answer is yes, are we missing the symbolic reference to the Caribbean community that the provision was intended to make? If the provision is not tied to citizenship, then is it properly placed in the chapter dealing with citizenship? I think those are the questions. So easily, I think the second question can be answered. It's not really intended to deal only with any privilege that may be conferred on such persons. But in a wider sense, to allow for laws dealing with Jamaica's participation in state groups. The other matter, I believe, well, before we go on to that, let me just ask, colleagues, is the recommendation, are you minded to then recommend that any provision in the Constitution empowering the Parliament or speaking to the powers of the Parliament to recognize Jamaica's participation in state groups should be stated broadly and without reference to any specific group? Is that the recommendation? A reference in the Constitution about the power of the Parliament to pass laws recognizing Jamaica's participation in a state group should be generally stated without reference to any particular group. Is that
is
what
my
the committee say?
Minister.
All right.
I don't know.
Let us record that with clarity.
I'm supporting Senator Braham in that regard.
All right, so the committee is recommending that reference to the power of the Parliament to make provision for the recognition of Jamaica's participation in state groups should be done generally without reference to any particular group. And that this provision should not be placed in the chapter dealing with citizenship. Yes?
Question? Is that a question, Madam Chair?
Well,
yes.
that is really what it is, yes.
Yeah. And if it is a question, yes, doesn't need to be
right.
included
yes.
in that, the section that deals with citizenship.
All right, so that's one issue resolved. The next matter now relates to the Parliament's power, or a reference of the Parliament's power to make provision prescribing the grounds on which and the procedure by which a person may become a citizen by descent. I gather from what we had discussed earlier that we shouldn't limit it to descent, but we should refer it to the manner in which Jamaican citizenship may be acquired. So Parliament may make provisions prescribing the grounds on
Chairman.
which and the procedure by which a person may become a citizen of Jamaica by birth, descent, or marriage, is what you're saying.
Chairman.
And that would take into account whether there is a requirement for a parent to be Jamaican. It may or may not. The intention is not to deprive those who already have citizenship at this time, but to ensure that the Parliament is not prevented from dealing quickly with any eventuality that may arise on matters dealing with citizenship in Jamaica. Jamaican citizenship.
Chairman,
that's the sense I'm getting.
I would like to defer on that until I hear from the Ministry of National Security. I think it was a good suggestion, and it could well influence our thoughts.
Yes. The suggestion is not to do away with that. I'm just saying that in addition to having the benefit of submissions from the Ministry of National Security, which has the subject matter responsibility for this area, if the intention is to ensure that the state can respond when necessary to deal with any matter that may pose a threat to it by virtue of who has Jamaican citizenship, then the provision about prescribing grounds on which and procedure by which a person may become citizen should not be limited to the acquisition of citizenship by descent. That's the point.
We may end up there, but I don't want to give my position at this time, because I feel that the people of the national security may have something that could be of value in the consideration. I don't want to indicate a change before hearing from them. I think it will be very useful.
I am agreeing with you, Senator Braham.
Very well. So I'm not offering a position at this stage, at least speaking for myself.
Right. I wasn't offering a position either, it was just a recognition of the limitations that flow from the current draft of the proposed 10C, that's all. So we bear that in mind. But I think it should also be made clear that the recommendation of the Constitutional Reform Committee did not go so far as to say that there should be any disturbance in the current provisions. Right now, the Constitution sets out the methods by which someone may acquire Jamaican nationality, and it also empowers the Parliament to pass laws for other means by which nationality may be acquired. However, if you acquire it by the means set out in the Constitution, what it says is that you shall not be deprived of it. And the question is, are we limiting ourselves? No. Do we need, with all of the changes that are taking place, and the need for states to protect themselves, whether it may not be wise to not lock ourselves in the way we have locked ourselves? No. So that's one which we will reserve on until we hear from the Ministry of National Security. So, Madam Clerk, please action immediately on close of this meeting the request for comments from the Ministry of National Security on the citizenship provisions in this bill, clauses 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right. Now we can go back to the other matter of clause 7 regarding the proposed section 8, and in particular, whether the proposed 8.4 is limiting appeal to the Court of Appeal, and if that is the intention. If it is not the intention, then the clause would need to be revised to avoid any doubt about what is intended. I don't believe that these are matters that we should decide on today, but having raised them, I'm inviting members to give further thought, and I would also invite the team from the ministry to look at the matter with a view to assisting the committee in its further deliberations. If we have agreement on that, I think that would be as far as we go today on discussion on the bill.
Chair, if I may.
Yes?
As we consider the issue of whether there is doubt cast upon the framing at 8.4 at clause 7, I wanted to use this opportunity to have members look at how it's provided for currently in the Constitution, because I know Senator Braham would have earlier mentioned that in the Charter, there is a particular reference in terms of how appeals go to the third tier. But the language of the Charter actually is similar to the language proposed here at 8.1, where at section 19.5, applications for redress, it says any person aggrieved by any determination of the Supreme Court under this section may appeal therefrom to the Court of Appeal. But having discussed it amongst my team, section 19.5, right. But having discussed it with my team, reference was made to section 44.1, which speaks to determination of questions as to membership, where there's an explicit cap on appeals, because it says any question whether any person has been validly elected or appointed as a member of either house shall be determined by the Court of Appeal, or on appeal by the Court of Appeal, whose decision shall be final in accordance with the provisions of any law. And this is reinforced at 110, which speaks to appeals to the Privy Council, where it recognizes 44 against the right of appeal to the Privy Council. So this seems to be an evaluation of a procedural aspect, looking at questions as to membership in the House, which may be similar, where there's a determination as to the decision of the Supreme Court in respect of whether this person should be deprived of citizenship. So in looking at those three provisions, I think it would be helpful to say if the intention is to allow it at the highest level of the local Court of Appeal, then an example is currently provided for in terms of keeping it there. But if it goes any higher than the Court of Appeal, or it should go any higher, then the charter or the framing of it in the charter would lend some guidance in terms of how that particular provision is to be interpreted.
All right. Thank you for those reminders.
Sorry, if
Mr.
I
Harper.
could just add my agreement, and I believe that a reading of 110 is crucial to this issue. I believe it is governed by that and covered under that provision.
All right. So the matter, section 8(4) at clause 7. So I'm just inviting, by way of reiteration, the attention of members and also members of the committee and members of the public to sections 44 and 110 of the Constitution, existing provisions. I'd say, however, that the way the provision is set out, it has moved it beyond a consideration of membership to the Parliament, even though that is where we had begun the conversation. The matter now is more broadly looking at citizenship, Jamaican citizenship. And I think in considering it, we also have to look at, for want of a better expression, I would say a prohibition on statelessness at the international law level. But we will come back to the committee as a ministry with responsibility for this bill, with some assistance on the provision. Because what we have to ensure is clarity in what we are providing for. So it's not so much the what now, but how we make the provisions to avoid any interpretation problems that we can readily see. All right. So the major matters for today is to invite the Ministry of National Security to comment specifically on clauses 7, 8, 9, and 10 of the bill, to provide us with some insight of matters that they may be more intimately familiar with in working in the field. Also, a proposal that the power of the Parliament to make provision recognizing Jamaica's participation in state groups should be broadly put without any reference to a particular group of states, and that the provision should be placed elsewhere. And then we will look back at the procedural aspects of citizenship, acquisition and deprivation, including renunciation, what we're seeking to do. All right. We can move to any other business. Is there any other business that members wish to have considered before this meeting is closed? If there is none, please accept the remarks I made earlier as my closing remarks. Madam Clerk, please remind me of the date of the next meeting. I know.
The date that had been proposed at the last meeting was that the next meeting would take place on the 19th. The 19th,
so that's a week after next, because Parliament is proroguing and
for next
the midterm is starting. Yeah.
It's a Wednesday,
all right.
So it will be the 19th and
yes.
the 20th and the 26th and the 27th, based on what was said
all
before.
right.
19, 20, and 26 and 27, based on what was said
Very
before.
well. Yes. All right. So please note the next meeting and the other meetings for your own diary. Matter of reiteration. Now, if there is no other business, it's now 12:56. May someone move for the adjournment of this meeting?
Hi, Madam Chairman. These meetings on a Thursday quite challenging for myself and MP Carencia. Coming on a Thursday is quite difficult for us. So if we could get another day, Wednesday is fine, or better.
Duly noted.
Not very good at all.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. So the motion to adjourn is moved by Member Smith, seconded by? No one is seconding the motion?
Seconded.
All right. Member Sinclair, and on the motion to adjourn, Member Smith has asked for consideration to be given not to schedule meetings on a Thursday. We already have some set, but we will reconsider. But our next meeting will be on the 19th. Thank you so much, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.